What did you find out after a first date that was a deal breaker? My date kept trying to braid my hair lol. At first, it seemed weird, but not like a deal breaker, but then he kept asking. The first time he asked, we were walking through the park, and I was telling a story, but he interrupted me, asking, "Can I please braid your hair?" I laughed, politely said no, and continued talking, but he kept interrupting, asking to braid my hair. I asked why, but all he said was, "I just wanted to braid it," and kept reaching for my head. I swatted his hand away a few times, and when it didn't work, I told him I was ready to go home. It was so creepy. Met up for drinks and she started telling me about how she thought I'd get along with her brother. After a couple of drinks, we end up at the bar where her brother worked. Hell of a guy. We kept playing hair metal on the jukebox and drinking beers. She went from saying I would get along with her brother to I remind her of her brother. The more she drank, the more she said it. We ended up making out and she started repeating the shit about her brother while rubbing my crotch. I made sure she got home safe, but that shit creeped me out so much that I never spoke to her again. A few options here. Tried to do cocaine in my car. Then they blocked me when I told him I didn't want a relationship. This one's gonna sound weird, but he thought he had discovered some amazing artist who wrote poems about Lord of the Rings and turned them into songs. The songs in question were just covers of the actual songs from the actual movies, with lyrics Tolkien himself wrote. He was creepy too, and then he refused to accept me telling him rather politely that it wasn't going to work out. Military guy 25 had a kid that I found out about after the fact. Nope. We called to get more comfortable before the first date. Afterwards we exchanged how much we enjoyed talking over DMs, and then he promised me with this message, "I'm glad you had fun, now it's the time you tell me that human-sized stuffies turn you on." In our one and only call we spoke about very emotional and serious topics. There was no point we flirted. So yeah, he could not understand why that made me uncomfortable, and he even proceeds to call me judgmental. So I told him the next day that I won't keep contact anymore. This was definitely not as bad as some of the ones getting posted, but there was literally nothing she could talk about that didn't have to do with TikTok. This was a while ago before it was as ingrained as it is now, but good lord. I was I think 28 at the time, she was 25, met through friends. Holy hell! I haven't used the app, but even back then I didn't understand a thing she was talking about. This was long before the dances and bringing back early emo-y nu metal. That I can't at least sound like an old man about. Technically this was after a second date, but I was so impressed that he'd treated me and the person who introduced us to sushi. I was 18 and he was 27, so I guess it just impressed me because most 18-year-olds can't just treat a group to sushi. But then he let slip that he'd paid for it all with his mom's credit card. He didn't have a job. Recovering addict. And his mom's credit cards were financing his whole life. So, it was a deal breaker. He asked me to pay for his court fees, that was my turn off, so I wanted to leave to end the date. I said my goodbyes. He threatened to tell the whole restaurant I was having an affair, cheated on him if I left. I stayed in fear of embarrassment. Excused myself to the restroom where I made my escape to the door. He saw me from the window, I saw him coming out, I ran a bit, looked back to see him chasing me, crying face, crying face. Crying face. I dated this really cute girl in college and it seemed great, but she was a born-again Christian, like really all about it too. I had to think it through because she was really cool, but a lot of things happen, like him an atheist and always will be. So many things aren't compatible with it. I am not waiting for marriage to have sex then having lots of kids. I still think about her sometimes though. He referred to every woman in his life as a cunt. His ex-wife, his co-workers, his son's girlfriend, the ladies he came across at work, correction officer. He must have used it 12 times in a 2-hour conversation. I think that's more than I've heard that word used in conversation in the previous 20 years combined. He was not British. There was no cultural slang going on. It was very off-putting. She had no hair. To note, this happened when I was 19 and immature, and just a few years later it wouldn't have been a deal breaker. She turned out to be antisocial, angry and closed off, which probably was from the trauma of having alopecia universalis during her formative years, so we wouldn't have worked out either way, but it was still a shitty line in the sand for me to draw. My worst one. Lied about having kids to 2 different dads. Let me know that Axe has intimidated past boyfriends, but, not to worry since he is all talk. 14K in dog store financing debt, max credit cards. Wanted a traditional relationship, I work, she homemakes. Tied her tubes, no kids for me. No sex till marriage, She found God apparently 4 months before meeting me. I went to the washroom during our date, as people do. Afterwards, he texted me to ask if I was playing the Hold It game with him. I was puzzled. Turns out, pee-pee fetish. Fine. Not my thing though. He tried to get me into it by sending me porn stories. Not fine. Like, have your kinks but don't force them on me or assume I'm playing some niche game lol. He told me that he couldn't wait to have kids with me and that he had picked out our kids' names. When I told him that this was our first date and I wasn't sure about kids and that this was a super creepy thing to say to me, he insisted it was my duty as a woman and that it would make me very happy. Yeah, there was no second date. This guy had pics of him snowboarding and rock climbing and all sorts of outdoor sports I love to do. Went to meet him. Here stood a 5 feet 11 inches Stuart Little sweater wearing Zach Galifianakis looking mother FKR. I definitely got catfished. I honestly think he lied about his age too. Never saw him again. I read through the comments and expected to see so many trivial things. I went on a date with a woman I met while traveling for work. She mentioned her husband in passing the next morning. I said, "Wait, you're married?" To which she replied, "What he doesn't know won't hurt him." I was pissed. On the surface, he was a lawyer with an Ivy League degree. Then just one layer deep, he had 6 kids with 5 different women. One of his exes hated him so much he took their kids to Germany to get away from him. And the kicker? His youngest was 6 months old and he was sleeping on his ex's couch. Shouldn't have been a reason, but it was at the time. Turned out she lived in the same apartment complex as my ex, who I had spent the last 2 years trying to get over, including therapy. She was absolutely lovely, but I couldn't make the drive to her place without being flooded with emotions. She was a hardcore Republican. I'm not really into politics, and don't really care much about it. And I know people can change. But she was starting to stating her opinion so hard. And was just downright racist. Sucked. She was really pretty, and funny. But that was a total turn off. She has been raped by her father. I just could not handle that. Edit why the downvotes? It happened. I still am in contact with her. She moved to another city though. I still don't know how she managed to hide it so well. Her friendly nature was what drew me to her in the first place. She was married. We met at a bar and left together. Went in at dinner, saw a movie, and she spent the night. The next morning she says, "I wonder if my husband figured out I didn't come home." Then she asked me for a ride to work and I got a ticket because she didn't wear her seatbelt. She had a date right after our date with her steady boyfriend. Not the next night, 5 minutes later. I had to drop her off at the next date. Like, why go out with me when you have a boyfriend? I didn't even try to kiss her, but she planted a big one on my lips to say goodbye. He told me he was kicked out of college because he was accused of rape. But there wasn't evidence for the state to charge him, but enough for him to be kicked out of school. I usually give folks the benefit of the doubt. That was a check please moment. Former professional baseball, a conspiracy theorist. US laser weapons starting Maui fires, chemtrails from airplanes. US government controlling global weather. New World and Antarctica that only super rich can sail their yachts to. Racist. I wanted Popeyes and she said that was N-word food. We had dated like 3 months and she had dated a black dude who I had met. I was blown away. I had a weird situation with her, so I had to stick around 2 more weeks, but after that I was out. He could list on the fingers of one hand the foods he would eat. He was a great guy, but I couldn't even imagine a second date because I like to eat in restaurants and we'd used up the one local place that he would tolerate any of the dishes from. She's into MLMs and encouraged me to invest in this amazing technology company that will launch an internet, cable, and cellular first. I should look into the company's flagship health supplements and skincare products. He was hung up on his ex to the point he wouldn't stop talking about her for the entire dinner. Oh, and he told me he was an alcoholic that still drinks and runs AA meetings. He got drunk and I used his phone to Uber him a ride home. Found his Twitter, and besides his online personality being hating on women and loving soccer, I saw a tweet about me, regarding a comment I said about not liking a certain artist and how stupid he thought I was. Ghosted him immediately. He told me his ex has like 7 multiple personalities, also told me their names and ages. I might have been okay with him, but he has an 8-year-old son with her, so she's going to be in his life for a while. I don't need the drama. He 18 or 19 explicitly told me 17 and a virgin that if I get pregnant I can't get an abortion because he's against it. Love when someone flies their red flag that high. It's been 8 years and that still hugely creeps me out. Not as advertised. I don't care if it's height, age or weight. If you lie about it I'm going to nope out of there, even if it leaves things feeling awkward as fuck. We aren't starting something on dishonesty, sorry. She was a drug addict. Shit sucked. Really cool girl, got along well, lots of chemistry. Pill problem. I tried to fix her, and it turns out she didn't like my older kid. Kid wasn't even 5. Had to cut that shit off. Found out she was a shot girl at a bar and walked around in an extremely small bikini flirting with guys for tips. Wasn't really interested in dating someone that made their money like that. He had 2 ex-wives with kids and seemed way too eager for marriage number 3. Big old nope. He also happened to grow up in this sex commune I grew up near called Morehouse. She showed up in an outfit I describe as "shit we need milk," let me run to the gas station and extremely late. She immediately asked if I wanted to get a room. Lol, nope. Drove erotically and way too fast with me in the car, trying to show off. I refused to go on another date but stayed in contact. They totaled their car the next week. He ordered french fries but left the tips on his plate. I asked him about this and he said he didn't like he tasted the tip. Go back to Crazy Town. Young man was set up with sister of friend's girlfriend. We were going for an easy walk through local woods. She told me I don't like nature, or being outside. Goodbye. Her other guy showed up in the middle of our date. She said, "Can I talk with him for a minute?" I said sure, then walked out the door and never looked back. They lied about their age. Said they were younger than they were to get me on the date. I wouldn't have cared about their age, but I did care about the lie. He was a really bad magician. Brought cards and everything, couldn't land a trick. I felt bad and took him up on a second date, but that was it.